Hey guys, it's MattyOW. This is gonna be my Aimlab settings video, and I'm just gonna go straight through this. And you can pause the video, copy my settings if you would like, and I'll explain some other things about aim training afterwards. So this is my crosshair settings. Most of the time I run IMB plus, like for dynamic clicking or tracking, and I run it at size 1, and I run yellow most of the time. Sometimes for tracking I like to turn it teal, like Scoochie. I also have a bunch of these other crosshairs. I'm gonna include in the description a MediaFire link that will let you download some of the crosshairs that I use all the time, like IMB plus, IMB dot, plus, Snowy. Just basically all the crosshairs that I like to use for any scenario in Aimlab, and also Kovacs, and sometimes I use it in AimBeast as well. Audio, I pretty much have everything else off. You don't want to have weapon value on. For toggle hit sound, usually for certain scenarios I have these on. Like sometimes I'll have a spawn sound on and I'll use Neo Tokyo. I have it. But most of the time in Aimlab I have it off. Kill sounds, sometimes I have like Zeke pop on just for target switching or something else like a kick or something. But if I'm just doing straight up dynamic clicking or static, sometimes I'll just run Talk 4, or for static clicking I'll run Bubble Pop. That should be here. Yeah, there it is. And I'll also include a MediaFire link to download all the sounds that I use. So these are my sound settings. My cooldown is 40. You don't want it too long because you won't really know how well you're hitting something. And you don't want it too short because then it's going to bleed your ears. Graphics. These are my graphic settings. My max cube frames. This is a very important setting. Low latency, balanced, low latency and balanced. You'll see a big frame increase if you go to performance from either of these. Mainly low latency. I used to play on low latency, but I realized that performance is best. I got like an instant like 500 plus FPS from doing that. All of these you want off, and I'm going to explain later. What most beginner players to aim training should start to do, if they haven't done this already, you should turn all of these off. We don't want to see like random FX or your gun model or anything that will be visual clutter. Alright, so visuals. This is the big one. Aimlab has not, as of me making this video, put in a system where I can switch out visual settings, so I just change these on the fly. And these are different per scenario, and I'll also explain later in the video which specific themes I like to use for each scenario type and exactly why I do that. Controls, again, sensitivity. I use a different sensitivity per scenario, and sometimes a different FOV per scenario, but the only time that I really change FOV is for certain wide wall static scenarios or for target switching scenarios. There isn't really a necessity to make your FOV higher than 103 for pretty much 75% of the scenarios that you will play. And you should never go under 103. 103 is the standard for aim training. ADS, I don't use it. I don't use sense randomizer. And all of these, pretty much. Oh, here's a very important one. If you want to have your scale be 360, centimeters per 360, you got to use advanced sensitivity options, because this will just show for the game profile that you use, but you got to use advanced. Another thing that most beginner aim trainers need to turn on. You should really be using the universal scale. For game settings, the only time that I really use black target colors is with static, because I use white walls. Really any other color goes. For target switching, sometimes I use green targets. For tracking, sometimes yellow targets, just like Scoochie. And I also use sometimes in reactive tracking pink targets, just like Siba. Really anything goes there. Just use something that will contrast well with the background or the environment you're in. And I have these settings off. And again, you don't want any of these. No weapon visible. Most of the time, at least for benchmark grinding, you're going to want the head-up display on, so I really think Aimlab needs to have a way to move it around or change where you can see those things, but it's whatever. Key binding, these are my keys. Just pause the video and copy. And then nothing for skins. Alright, so now I'm kind of go over how to properly set up Aimlab to aim train most effectively. And most of it has to do with visuals, and as I said before, you want to be turning off all of these extra settings that show gun models and effects. A lot of new players I still see, very new players, actually still have those on. You really should turn them off, as they will only hinder your experience in this game. A lot of players I see often use only one set of visuals for the scenarios they play. And sure, it's a little bit less hassle to have to play around with visuals all the time, especially in Aimlab, which doesn't have profiles. But I really believe in using different visuals per category and sometimes per scenario. I'm just going to go over the visuals that I like to use for each category, and we're going to start with static. So for static, I specifically go to solid color, and I make it some shade of white or gray. You can design it however you like. And I turn target colors to black. And really, what this does is you don't really need to perceive depth with these static scenarios. You're not dealing with moving targets, so you don't need to differentiate it from the environment like that. And this just makes it look really clean. Oh, my sense is so off right now. But yeah, that's the static theme that I like to use. Now, if we can move to a dynamic clicking scenario. Alright. So for dynamic clicking, I find that it's a lot harder to use a theme like this. Also, you should probably design your sky to be something that is also able to be good contrast. It's not even better at all, but as you can see, I can't differentiate from the environment or from the background as well with solid color when the bots are moving. And it's just, it's overall more difficult. So that's why I tend to switch to bricks, because this time, now I have some sort of sense of depth. And that's the main reason why many players that aren't static mains will use these kinds of setups. And I also change bot colors back to white. It's a lot easier to judge where these targets are going and where they are on the map. Often with smooth tracking, like I said, I switch to sometimes yellow targets and I switch to a teal crosshair. It really doesn't matter for most tracking what you decide to use for these colors and these visual settings, but it's not a bad idea to try and imitate the pros and the visuals that they have, but really you should try to find something that is visually pleasing to your eyes. Experiment. You want to try and find these things out for yourself, because a lot of settings in aim training and in FPS gaming in general, just copying the pros or just copying players who are really good at the certain categories, they might have personal reasons that they like certain settings, and those settings might not be the most optimal for you. And I really encourage players in this community to actually sit down, go to the visuals tab, or to whatever visual options you have in the aim trainer that you're using, and create your own themes, use colors and settings that you like and that are visually pleasing to you, instead of just copying a pro for the sake of copying a pro. Because a lot of the things that have to do with settings in pretty much this entire field, such as grip and crosshair and monitor placement, all of these things, it's all really based on preference, and there is no true most optimal setup that you can have unless it's specifically designed how you like. How I found my setup and how I designed everything, all of that really was either a mix of what I've seen and what I've learned from other players in the community, a jumbled mix, not just copying one player or one person, or I found it on my own. And really, once I started to have confidence in what I created for myself and the settings that I chose for myself, especially the ones that weren't really taken from any sort of base of knowledge or reference, that's when my scores and that's when my performance started to really start to shine. And I think players need to be more confident in themselves to choose these settings. Obviously, don't go for the extremes. Obviously, have a reference from other players on what is good or what is bad to use. There are certain things that will be really detrimental. But it's no problem in asking if something that you have is incorrect. But you shouldn't be seeking out these very precise answers from good players or players in general, because they really won't have one for you. And they'll just have one for themselves, and there's no guarantee that that will work for you. So, if anything that you're taking from this video, it shouldn't just be my settings, it should just be the mindset that you gotta find your own settings with the reference that is my settings. And I'm also aware that a lot of people, they don't really want to hear that, but I truly believe that a lot of aim training is based on personal preference. A lot of aim training settings will be the most optimal if it is chosen by you and you're satisfied with it and that you've experimented with it. So that's my settings video for Aimlab. I'll see you guys on stream at twitch.tv/MattyOW. Keep on dot clicking, and once again, guys, thank you for 3K subs. Appreciate it so much.